Hello my international darlings and welcome back to another video on Mary's channel, and yes, that's me. In this episode of Mclennon Series, I want to talk about some things that happened between 1962 and 1966. It was the time the Beatles got famous around the world, started touring, and during those tours they gave a lot of interviews. Those interviews are going to be the main topic of analysis in this video. But before the video starts, I want to anticipate for you guys that I plan on complete the series during the next month. So every Friday I will be posting a new episode. This series is going to have 10 episodes, and on the next ones I will be talking about LSD, India, the songs they wrote for each other, the divorce, the last weekend, the final years of Lennon's life, and Paul's feelings about it. As John would say later to Playboy in 1980, the early stuff, the hard day's night period, I call it, was the sexual equivalent of the beginning hysteria of a relationship. And looking at the pictures and videos of that time, we can clearly see that. These are certainly not proof, but according to some body languages experts, there are some behaviors of them that could be considered as signs of sexual attraction, being the most obvious the body closeness. According to the therapist Terry Arbuch, PhD and professor at Oakland University in Michigan, most people have a radius of about a foot and a half around us, and that is our personal space, she says. And if you let someone into that space, it indicates intimacy. And well, we could say that John and Paul were always very close to each other during those interviews and concerts. They were clearly more close to each other than to George and Ringo. Another well-known sign of body language that means attraction is to direct your body to the person you are attracted to, and obviously try to call their attention. We see this a lot during interviews where John is always trying to poke Paul and play with his hair. There is also a specific interview where Paul has his body almost completely turned to John's direction. But this one happened way after the time window I will be focusing on this video. Specialists also say that prolonged eye contact and parting your lips while looking or talking to each other is a sign of attraction. These are some behaviors that they had with each other, and most of them are registered on pictures and videos around the years of 1962 and 1966, but later on too. Too many people tend to believe that the whole Mclennon theory is based only in the way they look at each other in some pictures, and that is completely wrong. Body language is just one of the many aspects and proofs we have about Mclennon, and is not only ignorant but kind of homophobic to assume people believe they had something because they look gay. We are on episode 5 of the Mclennon series, and I just brought it up now, which means that their history was greater than just looks. Even though John said to Harry Nilsson once, "I'm just like anybody else, Harry. I fell for Paul's looks." In this interview that I believe that happened in 1963, Paul was suffering from some stomach pain, and you can clearly see he's not okay. Not only that, but John does not pay too much attention to the interview either. He is clearly worried about Paul. At some point, you can even listen to him asking Paul if he's okay, in a caring, heartwarming tone. Let's watch some of it.
How did you? Yeah.
Their demonstrations of affection, though, were not restricted to non-verbal language. Many of their flirting, if you can call that, would happen verbally during interviews and pass unnoticed by others. In a press conference in San Francisco, August 18, 1964, the interviewer asks, "How do you like not having any privacy?" Paul answers, "We do have some, you know." And John says, "We just had some before, didn't we, Paul?" Then Paul completes with, "We don't have a lot." In another press conference in Los Angeles, August 29, 1965, someone asked, "Paul, you've been described as having the face of a typical matinee idol. How do you feel about this?" Paul replies, "I don't feel about that. You know, I hate that. I'm not." And then John says, rugged. Then Paul confirms, rugged, rugged. As I'm not a native speaker of English, at first I didn't understand that right, but with a little bit of research, I discovered that rugged is normally used to describe someone who is sexy in a wild way, confident, badass, and normally has a scruffy and buffy appearance. And then I understood why John saying this simple word would be indeed a floating move. Almost 1 year later, in Tokyo, June 29, 1966, a journalist asked, "What musician and composer do you respect the most?" Paul answered at first, "I don't know, really," and then, after a pause, concluded, "John Lennon." John then shyly said, "Paul McCartney," and they both laughed comically. In the same year, August 22, in New York, they were asked, "Now that Paul is the only bachelor Beatle, do you find that the girls gravitate more to him than they do with the rest of you fellas? How do you feel about that?" And John replied, "They always did." After some laughter, Paul would say, "Well, the thing that we found after all this business of all the buttons that say, 'I love Ringo, I love John.' John's were outselling everyone's." And John said, "A rather distinctive Beatle," what Paul would repeat as a distinctive Beatle. At the same New York press conference, Paul addressed all the bigger than Christ polemic. For those who don't know, Lennon got himself into a huge controversy after sharing his mind about religion earlier that year. Long story short, he said the Beatles were more popular than Jesus at that time, and the press twisted his words completely, taking it out of context and making it sound like an anti-Christianism. This annoyed many Christians, and John got into trouble because of it. They were asked, "One of you, I believe it was George, said that you couldn't comment on Vietnam in this country, but you could in England. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?" And then Paul replied, "It was me. I mean, you know about that. Anyway, you know. I mean, we could say a thing about like John's religious thing in England, and it wouldn't be taken up and misinterpreted quite as much as it tends to get here. I mean, you know it does. The thing is, I think you can say things like that in England and people will listen a bit more than they do in America. Because in America, somebody will take it up and use it completely against you, and you won't have many scruples about doing that. You know, I'm probably putting my feet in it saying that, but..." And John interrupted him by saying, "You will be explaining to the next bunch." To which Paul replied, "Yeah, I know." Polemics aside, the truth is that Paul was always very protective of John. In the book Northern Songs, The True Story of the Beatles' Publishing Empire by Brian Southall, Sir Joseph Lockwood related, "I constantly saw Lennon and McCartney together because Paul came along to see that I wasn't rude to John, who I can't say I got on with. Paul didn't want me to upset John." In the book Many Years From Now by Barry Miles, Paul himself said, "I always find myself wanting to excuse John's behavior just because I loved him. It's like a child. Sure, he was a natty child, but don't you call my child natty? Even if it's me he's cheating on, don't you call him natty?" And that's it, my international darlings. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, don't forget to press the thumbs up button and share with a friend you think might like it too. Subscribe to become a certified international darling. I don't know what that is, but it sounds cool, right? I try to post videos every Friday, so turn on the notifications to stay tuned. Your feedback is always welcome in the comments, and if you watched this video until now, comment down below, Mclennon is real. I see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.